featuring guest musical performers, Metallica frontman, oh my, it's Stars and Garter. Also featuring, hey buddy, you're a tier high. Look out, it's Automaton 2000. And now, from Spreadsheet City, here's your host, Captain Idol.
Yes, and welcome to another week of Timelines Talks, and boy, do we have a show for you this week. And let me turn that off, and let me do... Oh, God, everything's gone wrong already.
There's
no such thing as a smooth show. We have a great show for you today. We have got lots of things to talk about. Where we thought this was going to be a slow week, we thought, oh, God, there's nothing. There's a Tuesday pack. That's it. No, we've got possibly the best dramatic reading of a fan fiction event ever. You've seen Angry Auto, you've heard Vindictive Auto, but have you come across fully functional Automaton 2000? Tonight, we will go fully into detail the pure, unfiltered romance that Auto has not only for Chakotay, but also for his creative romantic fan fiction that he will be performing live here tonight.
Yeah, and we're going to stick that at the end of the episode so you don't have to watch it.
What are you talking about? It's what they're here for. This is the quality content we're delivering. And
joining me, we have Auto, we have Stars and Garters, and again, for a second week in a row, we also have Mr. Big McLarge joining us yet again. Thank you very much for coming. And I want to give a little bit of context for the people that don't really know, who are these people? Where do they come from? Obviously, you know Automaton 2000, the prolific writer of the Big Book of Behold Advice. Stars and Garters and Big McLarge, also writers and contributors towards that book as well. So if you think, Big, what's so special about him? He's not the QA developer of Wicked Realm Games. He's no VIP fleet leader. No, he is an integral part of the Big Book. And here he is yet again to come and join us.
Well, and I do have a wonderful singing voice.
Oh, well, we'll test that out later on.
By the way, if you're at home playing the drinking game, we have had a graphical error to start the show. We have had a Big Book reference, and now Auto takes a drink. So
there you go.
Wait, we have a drinking game?
We have.
I
think we should now. So what
if
are we
not,
drinking
we should.
tonight? Yeah, I was going to say, Stars. What? Not Stars. Big. What have you got there?
This is the Deanston 12-year-old.
Tasty.
With an accent and everything too.
Yeah. It's a Deanston Scotch.
The correct answer was it is green, but I'll give you hot points.
It's from the boggy lowlands of Scotland. That's all you need to know. I'm sorry, I won't do that again.
The voices is what we're here for.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, so tonight we have a few things to go on for you. We're going to be talking about the offer wall. We're going to be talking about our new event crew. We shall be talking about a certain Krenim ship that leaked, and as always, our Tuesday pack, which might lead into something a bit more interesting. First of all, I'd like to try something new, which I'm going to try with chat as well, a little bit of chat interaction. You might have seen the poll that I put up about Chakotay and Janeway being potential lovers for the series. But we have tonight and I'm going to bring it up if I can find it. There it is, the Beholder meter, and there it goes, cycling through crew and stars. And what we're going to do tonight, we are going to stop this Beholder meter on a random thing, and we are going to choose the crew and vote on it in chat. For those listening on the podcast, I will announce who is in the Behold, and you can play at home. So we are going to stop it now. We will talk briefly about it whilst I try and start a vote. So are we ready? In 5, 4, 3. Captain Braxton at 0 stars. I forget who that is. Miranda Jones? Miranda Jones, yes. 0 stars. Or Merry Men Crusher at 1 star.
No, please enunciate correctly. It's Merry Men Crusher.
Merry Men, okay. Merry Man. Well, I don't know if she also wasn't a merry man, equality and all that. So let me go and start a poll while you guys have a chat about this.
So I feel like it's very interesting that this is our very first poll considering Braxton's reputation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's Captain Braxton, and it's not close.
Now, one of these crew has a vanity collection and 1 star already. So
The poll has started.
Okay. I think I would have to go Braxton here just because predominant advice is always you can't cite what you don't have. So that's the obvious part of the equation for me. And also, Merry Men Crusher is a weird card. I want to like her more than I do.
Yeah, I mean, she's got a decent skill set, but I mean, there's other options that would cover that same ground and do it better as far as voyages go. And we all know what a black hole Crusher events are in this game. I mean, she's getting some run now with the caregiver mega. So, I mean, that helps for all of 1 week, but still, it's better than nothing and better than what she had up to this point. But just Braxton's voyage power is just undeniable. So I think you'd have to take that, unless you were absolutely strapped on crew slots, and then you could think about adding a star.
Actually, Merry Men Crusher is not even a caregiver because
really,
she didn't do any. A lot of the Crushers are, but not her.
Ah,
interesting.
Okay.
All right, so no love for Pulowski from the original series, huh?
One of two appearances.
I love that art. That art is incredible.
That art would lead you to make bad decisions about your roster. Yes.
Is that what you said to your wife?
Getting started. Hey, I'm not the most hated man this week. Keep it up, sir.
It's a loving relationship. I don't think Miranda really comes into this at all, really. You would be taking her purely as for the vanity because you love the character, because you really like Diana Mulder.
She's still currently holding on to being a Vulcan, right? For some inexplicable reason.
Is she?
She's culturally a Vulcan, I think.
Weird.
And somehow Burnham isn't, but whatever.
Okay. Let's. I'm sure there's far more interesting beholds up. Braxton, yes.
I think it's going to have to be for Braxton. And the chat says when my bloomin' thing loads, it is 100% Braxton vote.
Where's your love of the game, guys? Where's your joy for interesting characters?
Where's that guy who's willing to throw a bomb in the room, huh? Say Miranda Jones and say fuck it.
So I would, for my roster, I would say Crusher because I have Braxton FF. So if but we are talking about what was appeared on the screen. But
Crusher, I hardly know her.
I'm sure you've made that joke 5 times in the big book already.
Yeah, I'm closing the poll now.
It's. I only made it once. No, Big McLarge Huge is the dad jokes, guys. So I just had to get one in before he.
over.
The time is coming. Don't worry.
Yeah. Shall we leave that? We'll come back to the Beholder meter. We will do that again later. Let's talk about the thing which went live literally about an hour ago. I think it wasn't that long, and was spoken about from TP themselves, from Tilting Point, is the offer wall. And I'm going to play my favorite image of the woman or girl running into the brick wall. I'm just going to keep that on there and while we talk about it. Yes, the offer wall has come live, and if you want to find it and look at it, it is actually on your dilithium purchase screen, and it's a tiny little button that says free dilithium. And over the last hour I had a little play to see how easy it was, and it is not easy, and at least not from where I am. I don't know if you guys have had a little try.
Yeah, I've experimented with it a little bit. I've been getting mostly download this game and either play or open this app to get the dilithium, and I just picked the ones where you just had to download the app and you get the credit. And I've done 3, and 2 of the 3 I've gotten the dilithium for already, so it worked out fairly well for me so far. But I am a low effort game player, so I am not gonna get to level 12 of your village or whatever to get some dilithium in some game I'm never gonna play again. So yeah, it's worked so far.
It's interesting because I've seen this in sort of other free-to-play mobile games before, and I've had the same experience here where I thought I'll try a nice simple one. I'll try a survey. So I went on the survey, clicked it, give a few details, put your details in. Brilliant. Answer these questions. Here's another survey. Okay, I'll answer this one and then go through it. And then here's another survey. And there did not seem to be any end in sight. And for the paltry, 51 dilithium, I just went, I can't be bothered. It is a lot of effort for not a lot.
Yeah, it's like as you said before, it's like I'll pay money for it. It's fine. I'll go on with my life.
Yeah, I've got my monthly card, so that will,
Yeah, in the end, it's sort of a thing of so for two things. I also play around with it. I tried like Idle to do a survey, and it asked me for all these like demographic information. What sector of retail I worked in, all this, and it's like 3 surveys in. I was like, which of these is the actual survey that I'm filling out for dilithium? Can you just announce that? Because for context, I used to play a free-to-play mobile game called Marvel Avengers Alliance, and it was like played through Facebook. And it had a very similar system where you would do surveys or download apps or whatever. And I was much younger and I didn't have financial control over anything, so I had to scrimp and I had to do all the free ones, the ones that didn't involve any in-app purchases. And I remember that being a lot easier than this, where it's a case of a lot of these offers, like the survey ones which you'd think would be easy, aren't. And the ones that actually have a decent payout require you to get to like level 130 of an app that I have no interest in playing. And it would be one thing if it was a case of, hey, answer 10, 15 questions, it will take like 10 minutes and you get, I don't know, maybe 100 dilithium. I could see myself doing that if I was bored or if I wanted to pull on a recap pack and I just didn't have quite enough dilithium. I could see that. Or if I was a VIP player and I wanted a chance at a character I really wanted. But as it is right now, I can't, unless I'm massively underestimating how much effort and drive is in the VIP zero players, I can't see this having any real play for most players. And I think this has been brought up by you guys a little bit, but I also feel like it kind of sleazes up the game.
Yeah, I don't think it's a great look to associate yourself, even however tangentially, with crazy slot extreme challenge, whatever, and just all these really brainless apps and games that otherwise you wouldn't give the time of day to, really. And also just to clarify, with the dilithium offers that I claimed, I think I got like 44 and 33 and maybe like 28 dilithium. So I mean, we're talking about a pretty paltry sum in the grand scheme of things.
I tried one of these, download the app, get to level 5, 400 dilithium, something like that. And I'm still waiting for that to come through. So it hasn't even registered. And I think that was like an hour and a half ago. But what it brings to mind, and for the love of me, I've not been able to get this out of my head. There was a thread on the Star Trek subreddit about 2 years ago. It was right after Tilting Point made their big investment into Disruptor Beam and Star Trek timelines. Tens of millions, I forget what the number was. So they invested it, and being a Star Trek game, it was newsworthy for the Star Trek subreddit. So I went on there to see what they would say about it. I made a little plug to the Timelines subreddit and laid out what the game is. It's sort of a freemium game. You can do stuff without paying, but this is the sort of budget you can expect, et cetera, et cetera. And the entire thread was just people dumping all over mobile games, the game itself. One of the quotes, I actually went and looked this up today because I wanted to see if it was as Mean Girls as I remember. One of the quotes is, "I would hardly call this a game. It's a card collection at best. There's no gameplay involved, and the card gathering is rather expensive." And my favorite comment,
nailed it. Got it.
My favorite comment from this thread was, "I thought Star Trek fans would not fall for these games." So I love that I'm not a true, real Star Trek fan.
The truth is out.
And this was around the time, all the disco infighting, a lot of political talk and all this stuff. So I haven't really gone back to the Star Trek subreddit since then. But okay, so that is the stigma around mobile games, around freemium games. And it is because of stuff like this. Like Big said, or Star said Sorry, guys. It introduces that layer of scum. Like, I go through and half the offers I see are make an in-app purchase, and then they'll give you dilithium. Is that free? No, it's not. It's baloney. Now, for VIP 0, because it is so scarce, maybe that helps them out. But then you also introduce all sorts of other, half the time these offers don't work. It doesn't give VIP points. Otherwise, what's the point of being VIP 0 if you can go pay money in other games to progress your game in Star Trek Timeline? So I can understand the niche usefulness, but from top to bottom, to me, it's like big thumbs down. We had that survey for the Homesteader Janeway a couple weeks ago. How likely are you to recommend this game to people you know? And I'm pretty sure that rating would nosedive if they were to ask after a week of the offer wall stuff. So,
well, yeah, and there has been talk. I mean, I don't know the veracity of it. Some of the stuff in these ad walls could have nefarious intentions of some kind. I mean, you're giving information away in some of these surveys and stuff like that, and who knows where that's going and what that's being used for. So you're being lured by. I mean, I don't know, and there's no way of confirming it that I know of, but it's something to watch very carefully.
You have to be very careful giving away your personal, because these are personal questions. These are questions: how many people are in your household? How much money do you make? How many people work on your organized? These are the ones I've been getting. How many people work in the organization? And this is, and if you know anything about how ad tracking works over the internet, this data is stored somewhere, and they talk to each other, and they collate, and especially Facebook privacy concerns as well. It's not just Facebook; it is everywhere, and freely giving away that information is something I think, if you're going to take this deal, is giving away your name, your address, your credit details, things like that, worth 49 dilithium, and I don't think so.
Yeah, like on that note, I think when I was filling out my one, there was like I was either a button or a thing that said, "We do not sell your data," or like opt into for us not to sell your data, and it's like the fact that you have to put that there means that I intrinsically don't believe you.
Yes,
because it's not as if data is a currency, correct? But it's a currency that has no appreciable value in the way that a bank account does. Like, data is just it's an answer to a question, but the fact of the matter is, what that is worth to people, you can't really measure yourself. It's the case of what it's worth to them. And
actually, I think data's an Android, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh,
there.
No, see, that's data. That's data. You're saying it wrong.
What's the difference? One is my name. The other
is not.
That's the layup. There you go. But yeah, it's a case of you do have to sort of think about this thing, because you think of these questions as innocuous and, well, who cares? It's not confidential. But how often does it kind of creep you out when you go onto like your Facebook or your Twitter or whatever, and you see an intrinsically personal thing of, why do you know about that? And it's because, you talk to my Google, which talks to my PlayStation, which talks to my mobile device, everything is interconnected, and you really can't rely on...
Skynet is coming online right now, and we're giving them the keys.
You can get very tinfoil hat with it and think, because there's a whole thing with like, Amazon Echoes and, I've got one sitting back there under my telly. I keep it off. But, we've all had stories, even though the companies intrinsically deny it, of I've been talking about sheds, and then you look on Amazon, oh, hang on, it's offering me sheds in the daily deals. It happens whether they admit it or don't.
Captain Two Sheds idle.
Hey, one for my bike, one for me.
That was way creepier than I'm sure you intended it to be. What are you doing in that shed, idle?
We'll find out later.
A, for what he intended, and B, for what this offer wall kind of represents.
Yes.
So,
well, I mean, and after all, it's an offer wall.
Oh my god. I'm gonna beat you over the head with that guitar.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So if you guys haven't noticed, today's stream is a bit zany, but I'm hoping that the tone is coming across. But you know what? I think I want to come back to something Idle said, and I think it's a point worth pointing out. that button for free dilithium is small, and I think it's probably because they're a little bit ashamed of it. And you know what?
They should.
They should be, and they probably are. And it's a case of just it's there. They're probably going to make some money off of it in some way. It's a mobile game. As long as it doesn't start creeping further in, it's whatever. It's a small button on a screen that most people don't look at, because I don't know many people who buy straight dilithium anyway.
Not a chance.
But
it's a weird sort of catch-22, because we were speaking to Stella the other day about how VIP Zero are not happy with the sort of pop-up nature of some of the deals as it is. It's very intrusive. On the flip side, we had Ben telling us that yes, they've got to make a living, but this sort of sits outside of Wicked Realm Games and sort of entering the very sort of marketing opportunities that Tilting Point are probably pushing down. They've probably said, yes, you can have an increased dev size. Through this transition, we'll give you more support, but we want this. And I think this is very much the other side of that, which is understandable. You see other mobile games doing that, and obviously it must be a good revenue point for them. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it.
I don't want anyone listening or any of the players to either be shamed or feel ashamed of this.
No.
Like, it's your personal data. What you do with it is your choice. How you spend time playing game is your choice. When we say, it's a little skeezy, we're talking about from the company's perspective. So, yeah, I'm sure there'll be some mudslinging or whatever insulting about that, because people love to do that about just about anything. But yeah, if how you play the game however you want, within the rules of the game, and that's your business.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to give any kind of advice, it's just go into it with your eyes open. Know what you're signing up for. Know what you are and aren't giving away in this process. But if you're comfortable with doing that, then by all means, take advantage of whatever is being made available to you.
And if you do need a credit card, there you are. 400 dilithium with it.
Yeah, hey, I can get you Stars and Garters a credit card info if you want.
I had to change my locks to believe that.
There was a comment on Discord just shortly before the show, and I'll see if I can find it, which did make me chuckle. Where is it? From Sue Suspirio says, the hope the stream is just auto-signing stars up for a bunch of trials and recurring charity donations.
I'm sure if I open up my phone, it will be doing it already. You know what? The charity donations I'm all right with. That one you can sign me up for a review.
Please think about the Andorians. For just 400 dilithium a week, you can save.
Hey, man, they have 4 genders. Things get complicated.
They do. Was that actually canon? Because I know they did that in the books, but...
I believe that in DS9 they confirm it's 4 genders, yeah.
Okay, let's move on from off-wall stuff. I think we've ranted on enough about that. Let's do more fun things. Let's do another Behold. So let's spin the Beholder meter. Bloop, 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 bloop. Here it goes. Da, 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 da. And stop. Ooh, here we go. So, all 0 stars. Anorax, Age of Sail Crusher, or is that's interfaced LaForge?
That's conditioned LaForge.
That's conditioned. I always get those two confused. So, Anorax, Crusher, or LaForge?
This is an interesting one, actually.
I mean, my snap judgment would be LaForge. I think he's highest up in the Voyage rankings. I think he's gonna end up with more events than any of these other 2 options. I think just kind of all around, he's a better crew.
Mr. Host,
but, I mean,
put a poll in the chat.
That's what I'm now doing.
Okay.
Don't call attention to the strings.
The poll has started. Crusher, Anorax, or LaForge. Please vote now.
Yeah. So this is an interesting one. So from my perspective, I have this Crusher, I think, at 2 or 3 stars out of 5. And for me, she doesn't make any voyages. I don't think she would even at 5 out of 5. But there is that vanity. I do really like Crusher. I like the art on this. And I feel like I would be really, really tempted. Especially because, like, NSEC, like, that got filled out so much last year. Like, if you got Determined Janeway, Resilient Tuvok, and they've been slowly but surely, like, slotting them in every now and then in events. You could go for LaForge. He's as Big said, he's one of the better voyage options here. But if you're looking for event use, LaForge has a notoriously spotty event history with lots of skirmishes and expeditions and galaxies, but no real like faction work. And No, I think I might go Crusher here. I'm gonna be controversial. Crusher.
You are going to be controversial. That is currently no votes for Crusher.
Well, and if you wanted another thing if you just wanted to go for Crusher, I mean, anything that boosts med and command in a single crew, that's a very underrepresented skill among voyage options. So, I mean, she's very weak comparatively, but anything that you can do to boost that is probably going to pay off for you.
Yeah, voyages have a shelf life, and if they're not a crew that you intend to sight, or you're not pulling 50 packs a day, when are you realistically going to fuse a crew from 1 to 5 stars? So voyages have a shelf life, vanities don't, and they just added a jaunty hat avatar to Age of Sail. So I guess I'd personally go Crusher, even though you could say maybe objectively, air quotes there, conditional forge is the better crew. I'd go for the vanity. Why not?
Is there any reason why anybody would be going for Red Foreman there?
Well, you just said it. He's Red Foreman, dumbass.
I mean, he's a Psi Sec, I believe, or Psi Command.
Psi Command.
He's Psi Command with a bit of Sec on the side. So I could see a bit of fringe use for that. He was a lot better before we had the massive Psi Command influx, which is basically rendered him all but pointless on voyages. He's got no collections. Yeah, I can't see a real case for him unless you're a real fan of Year of Hell, which, to be fair, great two-parter. One other thing, well, two other things actually in Gauntlet and in our Crusher's hat is you get both a kind of early game Gauntlet because she has like a few decent pairs, not great but decent. I don't think they were ranked, but they would get you out of trouble. And also, I believe she counts for the Physician collection, which, if we're running with the logic that with Diplomat and Vulcan having been expanded, you could do worse than going for a Physician boost. Yeah, no, this is actually an interesting one. But I think, like, from a raw one, getting all of these, like, 1 out of 5, yeah, it would depend a lot on your roster. And I feel like this was one where I could say, you know what, whoever you like the most, everyone's special. But I go Crusher.
So Crusher all round. Well, interestingly, chat has decided to go 80% LaForge, 20% Anorax, 0% Crusher.
That's fine. For gameplay reasons, LaForge is probably better. But
yes,
well, I see this thing on the chat. I don't want to step on the hosting news, but Prime Lorca is saying that vanities don't have a lasting impact in the long run. Isn't that the same as a shelf life? And I don't know if we've explicitly talked about collections all that much and what our philosophy is as far as the long-term value of collections. So this might be as good a time as any. I don't want to derail it, but.
Oh, this is a good one, actually. So it does depend a little bit on the vanity, because I think there are only 2 vanities that give you anything other than dilithium portals, and so it's Set Sail, which this is a part of, and the Niners collection. So if you want that ultra-exclusive avatar, then I guess that the shelf life is as long as it takes to get to the avatar. It's not going to be a stat booster, and I don't think they've added any particularly interesting stuff for the vanities, apart from Holodeck Enthusiasts, but I think that's kind of that was an experimental thing, which they haven't really done yet again. I would love it if they did. I love the whole concept of collecting all these crew to make a larger crew.
I think we were hoping that Age of Sail Picard was going to be the Age of Sail reward, weren't we? But we got a hat.
Got a hat. And I suppose with the case of like shelf life, it's a case of, as it says, like voyages have a shelf life, and it's a case of you have to pick and choose what you want to aim for in this game. And if you want to play collector, unless you intend on forking out enough to get all 839 crew, you kind of have to pick and choose your battles. And I feel like if you're going to pick and choose any battles, being able to scroll down your entire thing and show all of your collections are done, that's a pretty good. I would be impressed. I would give you a little golf clap.
Well, and I think also to kind of expand on the point of voyages having a shelf life, it's kind of the same thing that we talked about before about bases, about, your number 2 base, your number 25 base not being that far apart. It's that once you have a fairly well-rounded roster where you're hitting, whatever your goal is, 8 to 10 hour voyages pretty consistently. Anything that you're adding on top of that is going to be a very incremental increase. So at that point, you almost necessarily kind of shift your focus, because you're still going to want to play the game. You're still going to want to find things that keep you interested. And for a lot of players, and I think us included, collections have kind of become that. It's given us more long-term goals to pursue, when just pursuing stats kind of has lost a lot of its juice, so to speak.
Yeah, so Dr. Van Gogh debuted as, and forgive me if the numbers are off, they're pretty close, Voyager number 63, I want to say. So we were speculating about Homesteader Janeway in Discord, and I go, I bet she's going to come out as Voyager number 64. And she freaking did. Like, I was within one rank guess. So it's just like with bases. There may be a 10 rank difference, and that may be a 10-point difference, which is a fraction of a percentage. So, no one faults you going for pure gameplay purposes, but at some point, if you stop to smell the roses and pick up these Vanity Collection crew, when you jump back in the stream, whatever power creep crew come are going to be like right on the line graph of, okay, it has been this many months since the last crew. Here's where the stats are, this percentage increase. So with very few exceptions for outliers, have we seen anyone come close to Professor Sato in the last 2 years? When's the last time you had a Braxton show up that jumped the next Voyager by, 2 or 3%? Normally it's very tiny fractions. So gameplay is great. I went for that for several years, but if you want to go vanities too, whatever keeps you having goals and playing the game.
Well, yeah, and actually I'm been surprised that Braxton has hung on to the number 1 spot in the Voyage ranks for as long as he has. So it's really been, I don't want to say static, but it's been, pretty steady for a while now, so that once you've kind of, like I said, filled out your roster, there's really not much higher you can go from there, just chasing numbers.
I think, like you said previously, a lot of the new crew, and we joke amongst ourselves about it, but it does seem to be like they're fitting into the tier 3 mold. All the new crew, they'll pop up, they'll come to that point, and then they'll just slowly drop. But no one's actually, I think the most recent person that hit sort of like outstanding numbers was Cheesecake 7. Oh, sorry, Indulgent 7 for those who don't use the...
And actually, to bring it back to collections, that's kind of what we reckon is these improvements are so incremental. Some of them are right in the middle of the pack, that if you're trying to hit a breakpoint, say 12-hour voyages or whatever, you're just going to have to wait for global stat increases rather than the next great crew to be leaps and bounds ahead. And maybe, we don't get to that particular breakpoint in the game's lifetime or whatnot, but global boosts, stuff like the collection rework helps a little more in the long term, because like I said, you can always cycle back around. They'll have the next power creep crew coming out. So
yeah, and it's also worth noting that in relation to the maintaining of power creep in a very certain direction, I think what we've had 2 or 3 crew who came out who are with the dip bases, especially. I think it was Archer and Porthos, and it's a case of, I think he was absolutely neck and neck with Humboldt Archer. And then there was Age of Sail Picard right alongside. And it's a case of, these are not darts thrown at a dartboard. These are very carefully chosen numbers to maintain the supremacy of one card over another in a certain field. It's a case of, unless we see a radical change in how that's going, unless we see in the next month, new number 1 Voyager, new number 1 basis for all the stats or whatever, I think you can kind of safely say that someone who's going to be number 1 is going to be number 1 for a while. And it's a case of, unless you get them, then you have to start targeting other things to actually get that increase.
Cool. Okay, let's...
we really picked apart that behold, huh?
Yeah.
Let's move on that 10-minute unscheduled section.
But it's the kind of thing where people will have questions when we tier crew and stuff like that. Well, what really goes into it? Well, it's stuff like this, and I think it's instructive to see some of our thoughts and general
Absolutely.
philosophies when it comes.
I think
to,
if anyone has a behold that they find quite interesting, obviously we're going to be far too late to give an opinion on it. But if you have a behold that you find quite interesting for your roster, please send it along to us, and we'll have a look at it and send us your roster as well, and let us know sort of how we can sort of look at that, and we'll have a see how that sort of affects, because we can talk about all the crew in the world, but it is a subjective
and we
thing,
will at length.
And it's a very subjective thing. It does apply to your own roster, how the RNG has applied to you in a certain way. So we can talk about Braxton's great, but you might have so many other that is. Anyway, let's move on. Let's go talk about what's next. No, not that button. This button. We're going to talk about the event. So we have our very first talked about Chakotay event. Are you happy about this, Auto? Look at the smile on his face.
All right, so I was saying in pre-show, this reminds me of Galaxy Quest, where Tawny Madison, played by Sigourney Weaver, said, "Look, I have one job on this lousy ship. It's stupid, but I'm going to do it." And this is what I feel like with Chakotay. Okay, everyone hates him. He's boring, he's bland, whatever. He gets one event per year. I don't care. I like him, and I'm happy to see him, and I'm going to talk about him today. So that's why we're putting the recap at the end, so you could skip my love affair with Chakotay if you want. But
you don't want to. Just
I'm excited for a Chakotay. In fact, someone said, I have it here. Someone said on Discord, they pointed out, okay, we have 9 legendary Spocks, talking about first officers in the show. 9 legendary Spocks, 7 legendary Rikers, 6 legendary Kiras, 4 legendary T'Pols, which, come on, it's Enterprise, and 1 gold Chakotay before this. So, yeah, he does deserve a little more love.
So Krenim guest Chakotay is here. Psi Dip command, and quite impressive at that. He's up there, definitely. I don't think anyone would expect him to be within the top 30 voyages.
Well, that's sort of, I won't say they pulled numbers out of a hat, but I don't think you can equate the character really to their stat level.
No.
Yeah, well, pointing to that, actually, it's very interesting that we have this crew, considering we started off, what was about a month ago, we had Kate and Kira, very similar kind of crew, and yet she was slotted right into that Voyager 64 sort of spot, and we've had 3 or 4 voyages in that same kind of range, and here we have someone who is almost of the exact same sort of mold as her, and yet they've intentionally decided, okay, we're going to scooch you up a little bit into that sort of that Voyager rank, which maybe this is just weird about how my brain works, but I always think of Voyage 20s. I'm like, oh, right, New Eden Pike is in there, right? Oh, I really should get around to citing him. And then I look, it's like, oh, he's Voyage 30 or 40, because my brain just gets stuck in these places. But this is it's a decent Voyager. It's just a case of how much Psi you have on your roster. I have too much. I have way too much Psi on my roster.
Well, he's not helped by the fact that basically point for point, he's the same skill set, same order as Picard in number 1, which everybody got 4 out of 5 essentially for nothing. So that takes a lot of the shine off of him right from the get-go. I do think it's cool, though, that if you take Temporal Prisoner Chakotay and now Krenim Chakotay, the skills are the exact opposites of each other. One's, Psi Dip Comm, the other one's a Sec and Med. So that's some nice symmetry. I think that works better than it did for Suspiria, but that's another.
I was going to bring it up if you didn't, man. It was falling out of my mouth.
Go ahead, run with it.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to.
I want him to. As talking off that point, it's like a case of one of these things that I love about the wiki, which a plug, wiki needs editors. Go help out with your local Star Trek Timelines wiki. Go adopt a puppy. One of the things I love the most about reading certain crew entries is when they will note that, Chakotay was the 5th character to get or to have all 6 stats across various versions of the character, or Riker was the 3rd character to have a variant across all star levels, and it's a bit of it's the type of thing you find on the back of a baseball card, where it's you tell someone on the playground and who the fuck cares? Who cares? It's like, I care. I think it's neat.
Yeah.
I think it's neat.
Do you want to know another interesting fact? Is he actually shares the exact same skill set as Tuxedo Nog. So he's the direct upgrade to Tuxedo Nog.
No.
No? Is he
Not
not?
to call you out, but
Hang
on,
Nog
hang
has
on.
engineering.
My feet's lied to me. I have to
Yeah.
check this now.
Nog ain't got no sign, man.
Ah, shit. This is
I'm going to tap
embarrassing.
dance for auto. So Big talked about, and we talked this a lot, you have competition from Mega Crew or Giveaway Crew that you get 4 or 5. That's fair. But on the other side of that coin is he's nearly identical to Sirach on Voyages. And Sirach is like, what, over 2 years old now, or about 2 years? Not everyone has him, but nobody talks trash about Sirach on Voyages. He's been a staple for everyone since it came out. So if you're a newer player, if you don't have access to all those powerhouse Mega Crew, he's virtually identical. So yes, the skill set has been bloated, and there's definitely competition, but it depends where your roster's at, whether or not he's going to make a big impact for you.
Yeah.
I found out where I went wrong. Sorry to interrupt. I found out where I went wrong. It's Krenim Guest Paris. That's the same skill set as Nog. So anyway, Karen.
How could you forget such an iconic diplomat?
I'd rather
Yes.
spend a year
Although that-
what was it, solitary and confinement?
Confinement.
No, it's hilarious. So one thing that's interesting is that they decided to give him the diplomat collection, which is a nice little nudge to his value in a way that some other cards haven't gotten. And you know, I feel like he probably deserves it more than Krenim Guest Paris, considering the fact that he actually was being diplomatic in that episode. So that's one little instance of, look, they dovetail together. He is actually a diplomat. But so we're like, what, 3 out of 4 weeks into this mega. We've seen pretty much all the crew that we're going to see, and I have to bring something up. It's something that we
I know what this might be.
Yeah, and I feel like this isn't going to turn into a Suspiria rant. Don't worry, that's iconic. I'd never dream of touching that. So we're in the middle of a caregiver warp theorist mega, yeah?
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
You can't prove anything.
I can't prove anything. In fact, I'm going to prove the opposite. So, in a caregiver warp theorist mega, we have had, out of the event crew that have been available through like event packs and like, you know, through doing events, 0 warp theorists, 2 caregivers, and 2 like survivalists. This might as well have been a survivalist mega. Like, for all the actual dovetailing of crew and traits and megas, this is just gonzo to me. I kind of can't believe that there are crew hanging out in this event who should have caregiver. What's it going to hurt? Is caregiver going to get like 3 megas down the road? Is it really going to unbalance things if you give Suspiria the caregiver trait? Grandmother Kess, is it really going to break the game?
Well, and the other thing too is that I remember the huge stink that happened during the Cyberneticist mega when Agnes Girardi didn't have Cyberneticist at the beginning of her event. And so much so that they went back and gave her the trait as soon as they could do it. And nobody, I mean, yes, we're saying it now, but it's just, there is nobody that is really connected to the trait bonuses of this mega at all. So
No.
this is by far the worst.
This is the
So-
weirdest mega ever. Like,
Big shocker. I will defend Krenim Guest Chakotay, since he is before and after adjacent. They talk about the Year of Hell by name in that episode and the Chronoton torpedoes and all that. So, you know, I can see that. And obviously he's not a caregiver. You could give him Warp Theorist. Not really. They talk about the science they do on that episode is not really warp stuff. So, but he is at least related to that, which there have been so many off-the-wall characters that have nothing to do with it. Like, at least he is related. So I'll give him that.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like, Chakotay actually makes sense with the theme of this mega. I'm sure, like, believe it or not, there is writing in this game for the event. There is a story. I'm sure that I'll dovetail a bit more, like, naturally, but so far it's just been a case of, well, who hasn't had an event in a while? Rajenka's Rajenko's haven't had an event. Let's have a mega themed around the two traits that only they have both together. It's like, okay, I guess.
Which would be fine if we had more faction events.
Yeah, no, it's such a...
You want more faction events? You're not getting enough?
If you're going to do a mega about a trait theme, unless you're going to pile hard on the galaxy, you kind of want a few more faction events in there to take advantage of your pool of caregivers that they're not giving us.
Wicked Realm Games has this giant lever in their office with a red button that says more faction events, and they've just been waiting to pull that slot machine
I don't
lever.
want more faction events, but if you're going to do a trait mega, you kind of need to,
Yeah.
Well, and really, that's the only thing that makes it where it's not a bigger deal, I think, to more people that this has been so off-brand for this mega is the fact that after week 1, it really just has not mattered at all.
Yeah, it's been essentially who is the event crew of the week? Oh, I guess I'll unthaw them and use them. I always kind of enjoyed that sort of pre-mega build-up of, ooh, what's the theme? Ooh, what should I be angling for? I used to do like the breakdowns of what crew do you want to unfreeze, which ones would be the best bases, what would be, who has ship damage that you can use. And it's like, who cares? It's used to whatever.
Yeah, if I can do a little tangent here, I've heard more and more complaints that mega events aren't mega when they happen all the time, when themes don't make sense, this and that. And if Wicked Realm wants to reintroduce, if they've parsed through their data from the first 2 temporary achievements and they want to use that maybe as the conveyor belt to push out partially fused golds instead of mega events and maybe space those out a little more so they're more cohesive, more exciting, I'd be cool with that.
Let's move on quickly and talk briefly about Karen Archer, since she's adjacent to Chakotay before we move on to Janeway. Karen Archer, super rare crew for this week's Galaxy event, which means if you get to 130k, you will get 2 of her and her fancy tunic as well. She is the Dipsai command crew for this game, which is the same skill sets as Chakotay, which is a bit of an unusual one.
So she hails from E² or E2 if you can't be bothered to find the squared key on your keyboard. Which
Netflix couldn't.
Which oddly enough was one of the surveyed mega themes back when they were picking for before and after. So I don't know.
You're getting 2 megas in one.
Yeah, a little bit. So I don't know. Maybe this is like wild goose chasing, but it almost feels as if this is a filler mega. Like you know how in like episodes of like a TV shows there'll be filler. This does not contribute anything to the overall plot. There is no meaningful character development. This is the shenanigans of whatever is going on.
Is this the bottle mega? The episode, the common term for a bottle episode is an episode that's filmed
it's the clip
without
show
any.
Mega.
Yeah, it's the clip show.
Yeah, it's shades of grey. It's a mega.
This is Riker getting his brains blown out.
Do you guys remember that bloopers reel where they're on the transporter pad TNG and they're talking about ships and bottles, and Worf goes, "I never played with boys." He meant to say, "I've never played with ships and bottles," and he mixed those words up. If you guys haven't seen that, go on YouTube and find that blooper. That's hilarious.
Michael's all outtakes are the best.
As a tangent to that tangent, I've seen a YouTube channel putting up edits of those bloopers, and then they edit seamlessly in the correct take.
So I like that.
I never played with boys. Then everyone just is stone faced as if he said the correct line. But it feels almost like this is a filler mega, whether it's a case of, okay, we have to fill time until next XYZ thing, which will be a bit more, I don't want to say handcrafted, that's a bit of an odd description, but something with a bit more effort into it. And the thing is, I don't feel like it's a criticism to say, oh, this mega had a little bit less effort put into it, because fact of the matter is everyone works a job. You can't give 110% all the time. And we've had some really good megas. I feel like 1 or 2 megas, you can let those fly, because it's a case of you get a 4 out of 5 crew for new players or for people who don't look into expanding their roster in certain places. This is a good chance to grab some new crew. We come across as quite harsh about this, but it's a case of we're being a bit pedantic, to be real, and it's a case of
No.
upset. Um,
Pedantry is our business.
it's true. We care about the traits, so you don't have to. But in the end, it's a case of everyone's going to walk away with this little 4 out of 5 Suspiria, their selection of event crew, and in a year when we've had like 3 mega events which were actually really good and had like good cohesive themes, we're going to be like, oh yeah, that caregiver walked with this mega. I got Suspiria and I fused her in, and then I threw it in Fraser. And then that's all you're going to think of, really.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it does feel like it was kind of a leftovers thing, because if you go back and look at the survey that was put out where we picked the mega, a lot of these things like, E2 and things like that are on as options. So I think probably no matter what we picked, some version of a lot of these characters were going to be in it. And all we were picking was how the story was going to be written, essentially.
Yeah, I would actually. So this is a bit more. We're going on lots of tangents here, probably because there's not a lot to talk about. Because we're all waiting for Auto's bit. We're all waiting. We're prepping you. We're lulling you with false sense of security.
It's the low light of every week.
Exactly. I would be fascinated to talk with the writer for this game, because I actually read the dialogue. I actually do read the event things. I read the episode text, and especially with something like a player's choice, which we've now learned is apparently a thing that they have a dedicated time for that now. I would be fascinated to see how much variability you get with that. Like, how much of this was going to be... Because I'm sure the before and after Krenim theme was going to be there, but how do you then work in this character and that? Who is considered bland enough to be put into that place? Like, Karen Archer, for example, is a very bland character who does not do a lot in that episode. That episode is mostly focused around Lorien, T'Pol, and Trip. She doesn't really figure into it apart from the thing of, ooh, it's a future ship, and look, Archer eventually found someone who would sleep with him, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, she does 3 things. She has her she's yes-anding Lorien at the beginning. She's being exposition, basically just explaining where they came from, who they are, all that stuff. And then she has her Jiminy Cricket moment at the end of the episode where it's like, we shouldn't do this. This is wrong. And that's Karen Archer.
Yeah, so it almost makes me look at her and think, okay, yeah, so this was probably a character recycled from another potential mega theme that was slotted in here because she was considered bland enough that the dialogue she was written for would not seem out of character for her to say. And I feel like obviously I would love to speak to the writer about this. Maybe we can get them on the show. Maybe Ben, if you're watching this.
Yeah, spend 40 minutes trashing the game, and then, hey, you guys want to come back on?
You guys want to come back? Hey man,
he's through that episode 3.
He threw that Suspiria teaser images, and he knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
Who he was doing.
It's back and forth,
Yeah, he's a magnificent bastard. I'll give him that.
Can we do another Behold? I'd like to do.
Yes,
another
let's
Behold.
do that. Let's
Yes.
let's turn this off. Let's do one more Behold before the next section. So start it up. Here we go. Oh, and there are out of portal crew in here. I haven't filtered that out yet. So and stop. 2-star RAF Miles O'Brien, 1-star Colonel Q, or a Bashir. Julian Bashir. I had to think about his name then. So O'Brien, Q, or Bashir, and I will start making the poll now.
I think we need to start weighing these Beholds, kind of like Wicked Realm does. Wink, wink. Because this one to me looks like another slam dunk with Miley O'Brien.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, double collections, uncommon skill set, still usable base for Miles events. Some good traits. I think he's got like pilot and hero and a few other things in there that are fun. And he's just a fun card. Like, I remember we mentioned him on our Art Chat not long ago. That being said, like, Bond Shear is fun. I do like the fact that like the names for him and Garrick are stylized in the James Bond fashion. He's a little bit of... He's one of those flatly distributed med cards like Dark Ages McCoy, usable in Gauntlet. Like, he's I don't want to say a close second, but he is the second. Colonel Q is... oh boy.
He's like 4th or 5th in this choice. And there's only 3.
Yeah, there's a few crew you can't see on the other side of these characters, and you're like, yeah, I'd rather them before Colonel Q.
So a fleet mate actually won Colonel Q's event. It was a faction event, I think, and he won it with like 2-something million. So scores were really low for like no one wanted him. So he just swooped in and won the event. So congrats to him.
I remember getting him from recaps and airlocking him because why?
But now before we move on, you shouted out Miles' hero trait. I want a hero mega because 1001 is just waiting in the wings for some poor souls to be tapped for a hero event.
Is that a hero? Are they a hero? Are they?
Yeah. Well, I know the purples are. I assume then that the gold would be when you fuse them, if you fuse them.
Because in the context of the episode, they're saving their planet, so they're big heroes,
Okay.
even though.
Yeah.
Anything to
some
say
people
on
that would-
Bashir? Sorry, go on.
Oh, well, I was just going to say that some people that wouldn't know better would be chasing them in 490 packs to fuse that wonderful, wonderful legendary just because it's there to do.
Who is this person? And can we get them there?
He's
Oh,
hanging
they're
around
floating
somewhere
around
in the
at
chat.
Yeah, I see him right there.
Someone out there is a TNG season 1 fan out there going, "Argh!"
Mhm.
Get on the show, Garrick.
Oh, God.
Anything to say about Bashir, despite his very hard to craft bear?
Okay, so I'm going to go into like a really nerdy thing here, right? Okay.
That's why we're here.
Yeah. So as I'm sure we've talked about on the show, me and Otto are big fans of James Bond, which this is like the most. This is where we start to diverge. And we were watching Octopussy during the skirmish, which we have actually neglected to talk about the end results of, by the way.
Oh yes, we'll go on to that.
Yeah. Just a little reminder to our host.
We have very important stuff going on right now. Don't mess up.
And in that, so what is James Bond's signature weapon? It is the Walther PPK, right? Except in Octopussy, even though he calls it that, he's using a Walther P5 because that was the gun that Walther had out that year. And they were like, just make Roger Moore use this. This is part of our sponsorship deal. And now I want to draw your attention to the fact that Bond Shear, who is clearly meant to be that James Bond analog, that is not a Walther PPK. That looks more like, I don't know, some kind of like chunky Glock or whatever. And that's this entire stupid, nonsensical. It's always bothered me. It's always bothered me that because he never makes that pose in the episode. I don't think he even uses a gun almost in that entire episode. So that is purely a case of they have traced over some Sean Connery.
Oh, you think?
Post. I'm pretty sure because I recognize that intertwined legs pose.
So that is an early Bond film Sean Connery outfit.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably Doctor No. Russia with Love, Doctor No, which is his first iconic Bond. James, that's Doctor No, isn't it?
Doctor No, because he does it in the casino. And I feel like that's been traced there, and then they've given him slightly the wrong gun. And I feel like I'm probably the only person in the entire world who's slightly bothered by that. And that is I promise you, I will try not to do this again.
No, it's good. I don't think anyone knew that. I didn't know.
If the artists by some chance would ever see this episode, they like have their hands on their head. They'd be like, "What? Are you serious? This was like 4 years ago. Why is this guy bringing this up?" Right? Like, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, like, that would be like a very special moment in his career for him to get that shouted out 4 years later.
I bring to you.
No, that's what he's thinking. Is like, I got away with it for 4 years. Finally, somebody got me.
It's the real Bond villain all along.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you won't be surprised that O'Brien won 100% of the votes there.
Congratulations, chat. You made the correct choice.
You did for once.
I think that O'Brien is my number one pick for who I would want for a premium campaign because I really want to finish him off.
Yeah, I don't have him actually. I don't think I don't have any of them. Sorry.
Well, plus, I mean, holodeck enthusiasts. I mean, that are in any way decent because there are some really trash crew in the holodeck enthusiast class.
Talk about Beowulf, Kim. You talking smack?
I am. Come at me, bro.
By the way, if we ever recap that episode, that'll be a fun one.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Lord Schweitzer. Okay.
I mean,
We don't have Freya. That'd be a fun card.
Yeah, that's true. Shall we? You mentioned it stars, so we should quickly, because we haven't put this in our notes, but should we quickly talk about the end of the skirmish? Because this was the first skirmish event with the auto and the 3x speeds, and we saw some astronomic.
Astrometric's fine. Astrometric's
Yeah,
fine.
exactly. It's fine. Some astronomical scores, including the winner, which is Timeline's Discord's own mod for the many. So shout out her for getting a stupidly high score and no sleep, from what I hear. But yeah, no, I think even I ranked 200 and something. I can't remember now, but that was easily my high score, and I put in about the same amount of time as I would a normal skirmish. So. And one of the things I wanted to sort of mention is, and I think we spoke about this briefly before the skirmish, is this is very much turned into a Crons over time event now, whereas it's more akin to a galaxy than it was before.
Well, I actually have an interesting thing to say about that. So, I always have interesting things to say. My rank was around about, I think, 1008. And that's a little bit low for me for a skirmish. I was at work, so I couldn't put all the time I wanted into it. I really did want to get Van Gogh, because I like the character. It's nice and weird. And I came out of it with almost exactly the same amount of Chrontons I went in with. Which if you're doing skirmish correctly, I feel like that's almost kind of how it works, because all it takes is a few 300s and you make back a lot of that bank. So while Chrontons are more of a factor than they were, I still feel like time is still the underlying variable here. It's a case of you have to be willing to put in that time. The time has been shortened for everyone, but you still have to put in that investment. And I want to see the alternate timeline, the Star Trek timelines, as it were, where we don't get this update. And I would be curious to see how different these rankings actually would be.
Well, and I ended up in a very similar position to you, Stars, where I got out with basically the same amount of crons that I went in with, and got pretty much where I wanted to get. I think I ended in the 700 somewhere rank. But I think also things are a little skewed by that deal that they ran at the beginning of the skirmish, where everybody got chronotons and intel. So that kind of offsets some of the investment that I think a lot of players made. And I think I'm one of them. I think I would have ended up, probably a few thousand crons down if I hadn't gotten all of those reloads, basically.
Definitely that. I mean, we laughed when we saw the deal and think, they're selling intel. But I did pull on, I think I bought all 5 and then actually went, oh, hang on. This was, in addition to being a good dilithium deal, it was actually quite a boon to have that initial intel hit.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, the important thing is that for those who criticize us for being whaley, you're correct. But we didn't buy an Intel and Chronoton deal because we're not stupid. We bought an Intel and Chronoton deal because it came bundled with a really good value for us. Bundled with dilithium, which people are going to use on recaps or whatever you like. That's
Spend
what
your
makes
money and your personal data responsibly.
Exactly. Don't be us. Don't be whales. So if you're out there, Ben, congratulations. You actually made us. If you're out there, Ben, watching this, congratulations. You made me buy a kind of a Chronoton deal. I don't know how you handle that.
I always see threads whenever there's a huge score like there was in this case, people are like, well, how does that happen? Oh, you just spend money. No, that's not the case. All right, you can buy offers like this. You could have bought 10 offers like this, and that wouldn't have made up a fraction of the victory points actually scored by number one. I think she said she spent about 125,000 chronotons. That means saving. That means you're not buying that much out of the store, guys. You're saving up a lot. You
literally can't. You can't.
Yeah, exactly.
You can buy. I think then there's a Galaxion. You can buy. What is it? Is it 1,000 at a time, or is it 1,500?
Yeah,
you can only buy that 5 times, and in that time you can make that through voyages and through ad warps.
That does add up, but like we've said previously, if you're at endgame, which a lot of these event winners are, they've been playing for years, they know all the tips and tricks and stuff. They don't have a huge backlog of crew to level. Oftentimes, chronotons build up whether they want to or not. So, yeah, and I'm also glad that we have a lot of different viewpoints on this show in terms of time spent. I mean, because we have dads here who couldn't skirmish all weekend if they wanted to, let alone a couple hours sneak away. And I'm lucky to be able to make my own hours at work. So I was able to, you guys didn't drop any chronotons. I was down 30,000 over the course of the event to finish about 70.
15,000 crons I spent net.
And,
so after the resurgence.
Yeah, so I made top 100 this account is a month and a half old,
actually,
and it was on medium difficulty.
Shout out to you for doing this on medium. What is it? Not captain,
elite.
Is it? Yeah, elite. That's the one. Yeah, elite.
I always mix up elite and epic, but
yeah.
And this is not a backpat. Like, you guys don't need to spend money. You don't need to have the best of the best. Save up, and if you're able to take, it does take a lot of time. Granted, that's true. Even with speed up, you're looking at 10, 15, maybe 20 hours if you want to get up very high, but it can be done, and it can be done for free. So
yeah. Before we continue, I have to call out someone in the chat because they are like my soulmate, and that is Commander Sinclair 42, who points out that the Sean Connery pose that I'm referring to is actually holding a Walther P38 and not a Walther PPK. And you know what? I know exactly the pose he's talking about precisely because I used to have a massive coffee table book of James Bond movie posters, including ones from like Turkey and Russia and whatever. And that pose is also copied over onto, I think, Roger Moore and used all the time there. And he also occasionally has a weird looking gun that is not a Walther PPK, and it's a weird fusion of Walther pistols. So I had to call that out because I'm validated.
Vindication!
All right, should we get to the meat and bones? Tuesday pack, temporary achievements. Let's have a chat about Homesteader Chakotay teasing Janeway. Here she is in all her glory. So we have temporary achievements. We have slightly less than the Bones McCoy, where you got 4 or 5 Bones McCoy from completing a variety of gauntlet. I think there was ship battles in that one. That's the one we're missing this time. Ship battles, faction, gauntlet, and shuttles. This time we can only get 3, and instead of her being a deal like McCoy was, you actually get her through Tuesday packs, which is a different approach to before. But if you're a free-to-play player, I think 3 stars of her regardless is not bad considering her rankings.
So the first temporary achievement reward, Bones McCoy was, and I think I had given wrong information in the past. He was the same 3 from temporary achievements, but then 1 was a giveaway in the portal. So ostensibly you got 4 for free, and then you could pick up 1 from the deal to finish him if you didn't want to spend a citation.
Yeah, so Homesteader Janeway. She was, I'm pretty sure we said this right, but she was the one that was picked through the Player's Choice pack. We were all really worried about when we filled that out. I think a few of us filled that survey out and we were like, oh, wait, should we have filled it in the other way around so that she doesn't end in a 6-pack? So I think,
monkey paw curls.
Oh, dear, maybe we should have all voted for Vina. So I feel like 3 out of 5 of the only Janeway with Med, the best Janeway side base. I feel like 3 out of 5 of her, that's a good deal. I took 1 pull on that 6-pack and got a Kim Tar, who I already have immortalized. So don't do 6-packs, kids. Know when to say no. That's the only advice I'll ever give you consistently week to week.
If a guy turns up in a van saying Tuesday 6-packs, don't get in.
Yeah, it's true.
If you're pulling Tuesday 6-packs, that's probably how you came to live in the van in the first place. So.
Yes, true. Yeah. My 6 stars of Medic Reno say hello.
Yes. So I quite like this card. Again, it comes out to the thing of every time there's a unique variant of a crew that has a skill that none of the other ones have, like Van Gogh or like Chakotay with Engmed and like that one. So it distracts a little bit my ears. Case of this will come in handy somewhere down the road. And even if you don't get that little bit of a ooh, there are, I think, how many Janeway variants with Psy? Like 13 of them?
13. I think she makes
Wow.
number 13.
She makes, so lucky number 13. She's the best of them all, and there will be seats for her. And I believe she has like a 92% faction rate, if I'm stealing your notes correctly.
12 out of the 13 Janeway variant events have included a faction component, yes.
Yes, I stole your notes correctly. I'm glad. So not only will you use her, you will use her in, like, I suppose probably the most efficient way possible. And even though, I suppose I am kind of guilty of looking at her and going, oh, another Med Voyager. It's like, not everyone is stacking med like I am. This is a good get for a lot of players. And, like, these aren't hard to complete tasks.
No, not over the time of duration. You've got like sort of till the 21st of July to do this, which is easily just under a month.
Yeah.
And not everybody got a Seeking Spock. Not everybody has lucked into copies of Juliana Tainer or were here long enough to have gotten Q as God to cover this. So, we kind of have blinders on sometimes when we're just looking at our own roster, and it's like, yeah, well, I don't need another Med crew, but there are a lot of players out there that would need it, and this is huge.
And we've talked for a long time about med being the choke point in terms of voyages. And I think really they have changed course on that. The amount of med crew that have joined the game, even if not primary, has been noticeable. So the card itself, I know Star Trek Timelines Talks listener Bilo Band went hard in the six packs, pulled a copy, and I think she's soon to be immortal. He's probably churning away the shuttles right now to try to get her fully fused. And yeah, if you're a Janeway fan, this is about as good as it gets so far. So, did I say something wrong? Are you seeing if you have her finished yet?
I'm just checking my shuttles. I just actually opened it to the offer wall and I felt sad.
You should. So we went with unfortunately we had to go with a tier 3. She doesn't have quite the edge to be a tier 2, and she's head and shoulders above everyone in tier 4. So we continue with this trend of you're either bad, you're a real bad like Linus, or you're in a tier 3, basically, feels like. Now, before we continue, I would like to bring up one more thing from the chat. Rikers Island says that in every skirmish they go for top 1500, 100% success rate at epic level, but they finish with an average net loss of 11 to 12 chronotons. I'm guessing that's 12,000. Are they doing something wrong? And unless I'm misunderstanding the question, it's purely a case of chance, isn't it? It's a case of...
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean, other than maybe something like not using supply kits or something like that, some kind of technical thing, it really is just kind of luck of the draw, what your drop boxes give you.
This was an honor skirmish for me. I got so much honor from the pools. Like I could size someone, I got 50k straight out for what I put in. But my chron return wasn't as great as say yours was. I ended up definitely on a loss. But
I've never gone exactly for 1500. It's such a profitable event type that if I have the time, I like to go as far as I can. So, but I have a very large sample size of a lot of high VP finishes, and the chronoton loss has always been consistent for me. I know a lot of people say they can start with more than what they, or end with more than what they started with or whatnot, but the drain has always been very consistent for me. So yes, if you're down thousands, that's normal. It is mathematically, the more you play, you will lose at a consistent rate. So I don't think anyone's done a huge data gathering thing on that, but people who have won events or played a lot of high scoring events they'll all tell you the same thing. Yes, you can expect to, the more you play, you will lose some of your chronoton banks.
And I think someone else on chat, Commander Sinclair, also says about, I never spend dill for the boat because you've got that 10 dilithium bonus you can accidentally click, which I did twice, but honestly, I've never do that because you could just equally end up with more credits for 10 dilithium. So I think some of the more hardcore rankers will do that just to try and get the more VP and a bit more chronotons back for it. But
sorry, can I a hardcore rankers, huh?
yeah, ranker.
Ranker.
Look, don't be coming with this casual
"Brr."
nonsense on this show.
So yeah, and also to Rikers Island, you're doing everything correctly. It's just a case of you are participating in an event which is chronoton intensive, and you're probably just not getting as lucky as other people who are getting 300 drops, 150 drops. Like, it's entirely random. In fact, I wanted to bring up the fact that I didn't get a single one of those one times premium pulls out of this entire event, and I played I got 1.8 million VP. I don't know what the VP end up as. I think that's probably the same for you guys. Like, how many premium pulls do you think you got out of all this?
Oh, none this one.
Yeah.
Usually I think I've got maybe.
I think I've gotten 3 premium pulls in the entire history of skirmishes.
Yeah.
Start to finish. So it's very, very rare.
Yeah. So RNG is a massive component of this. I'm sure there's someone out there who consistently gets 1 or 2. Random number means random number. It's a case of sometimes you'll get lucky, sometimes you won't. You're not doing anything wrong. You are seen. You are valid.
It's that old Dilda comic where the the 2 characters go up to this. This is our random number generator, and he's sitting there going 9, 9, 9. Is he sure he's working? So we won't know it's random.
Yeah, I think Chad is sorting Rikers out pretty well.
Yeah.
Everyone's experience is a little different. You get chronotons from other sources during the event as well, which might, sort of throw off the numbers. But
well, yeah, that's very true, actually, because that's something that I don't necessarily think about all the time when I finish even, is the fact that, I'm probably pulling around 3,000 or so off of voyages over the course of a skirmish event, and they might not be able to do things to that same degree. And that all adds up at the end.
Have we said enough about Homesteader Janeway?
not nearly enough.
Not nearly. Is this a good little segue? Or did you want to talk about something else?
I don't know. Do we have time for one more Behold? Because
People
are going to tune out
let's do a quick
before
one.
this story time anyway.
Let's do a quick one before... Right, there we go.
Yeah,
so,
just 15 or 20 minutes discussion on this one. So.
Right, so here we go.
This is fun.
Through.
You're going to sit here and listen to us fun talk.
Okay. Someone say when.
When?
3-star. Oh, okay, here we go. 3-star HMS Pinafore data.
Oh.
0-star. Okay. No stars on Scrooge data or no stars on Leonardo da Vinci. So, yeah, HMS data, Scrooge data, or Leo. And let me start the poll, which takes me an age, so feel free, guys.
Okay, so it's apt that you mentioned that this little generator here doesn't include out-of-portal crew because Scrooge data is not currently on the portal.
Let's assume that's not a consideration for the sake of this.
Yeah, let's assume he's in the portal for this. This is a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't have a snap judgment right away as to who I would take there. I mean, initially I would think that
the poll has started.
Adding a star to data to Pinafore data would make a lot of sense to me, just because when you get up to the 4th star, that's when you really start getting the big bonuses, and that's when you can start actually think about using crews on voyages, even if you have a pretty hefty roster. But man, Da Vinci.
I am missing Stellar Ice and chat yelling diffuse, because that is sort of her default answer for the lower spenders, which is usually pretty good advice. She must be banning some nerds on Discord or something.
All right, so let's break this down and try and do this as empirically as possible. So, collection value, Leo is the clear winner, I think, right? I believe he counts for Innovator and I think Inspiring?
Innovator and Inspire, and then the other two, I believe, don't have a collection.
Okay, but I know Data has his event clip is slowed down a little bit, even though we thought it would pick up. So I think it's probably going to be actually objectively a equal number, but probably skewed in Data's behalf.
I would think over the life of the game from here on, Data would probably still get more events than Da Vinci. But,
No.
what do
Once
we know?
again, extrapolation tells us he's going downhill. He's going to get negative events pretty soon. So
They're going to go back and just take all the old events out.
they lower his stats for some events,
Yeah.
I'm going to go with, and this is the whale in me talking, I'm going with Leo because, I can always make a crew spot for a crew slot spot for a good crew, and he's a good crew. And if I'm playing the long game, I have my both toes crossed that we get big collection expansions. A double collection piece is also attached to a strong, maybe not great top shelf Voyager anymore. And he's just a fun character too. He's got 65% gauntlets. Like, unless you're playing by the numbers all the time, if you want to play with some fun characters with big crit rolls, roll the dice, he's a fun one to bring along. So I'll go with Leo. Why not?
Well, and pretty much 2-1, except for, ironically enough, Scrooge, who's there. Datas are pretty poor Voyagers, statistically. I mean, they might have some plus skill sets here and there, but the raw voyage numbers are pretty poor.
Well, that's not necessarily their fault because they're all very old too. I think Tempted Data was release or close to release. And if you were to cite him back then, I mean, getting 4 years use out of a crew, even if you're not using them every day now, is pretty good value. So, I don't blame anyone for hanging their hat on event value here.
Yeah. I would probably go for HMS Pinafore Data just because the fuse is the prevailing wisdom. I really like that scene from Insurrection. You're one step closer to getting him finished, which is always a big plus. It always feels really nice, especially if you can finish a gold. He has a little bit of gauntlet use, not a massive amount, because like Eng is just like that wasteland where anyone can essentially throw their hat in and occasionally win around. Good for event use because he's got the command, which is a bit more uncommon for Datas, but is a very common shuttle seating for factions, although I don't think Data has the best faction rate in the game. I don't know, I feel like I would go with Pinafore here.
Interesting. I will.
So no Scrooge law.
Well,
are you going to break the mold?
According to chat, the most popular vote is Leo, followed by HMS, and none for Scrooge, which surprises me somewhat. And I'm going to close.
What about you, Idle?
I would go Leo. He is still, despite how old he is still quite a strong entry. And I remember getting very excited when he turned up at a behold for me once that I didn't even look at the other options. I just went, Leo. Oh, shit, Braxton.
Same.
No.
So would it be fair to say that we say bar humbug?
I don't know. I like Scrooge. He's useful to me, even if I've still got him at 4 or 5 stars. But I've got a fondness for him. But I'd have to say Leo in this circumstance.
Yeah, he's got fun art. Like there's a very finely textured robe, and it's a very it's 5 minutes at the beginning of an episode, and it's just fun.
And if you know the history was when people were getting very irate because we had no idea what was coming in the next campaign, literally up to the day. And then all of a sudden it's a unique character to campaigns. And everyone was like, oh, we forgive you.
Well, and, a lot of people, including myself, were, getting very chesty about this. Well, they're not going to put a new character in a campaign. They're never going to do that. Look, they just,
and just thrown off every campaign prediction ever.
Yeah, no, in fact, you know what? If this was my personal roster and not like a raw behold on someone else's imaginary account, I would take Scrooge with a bullet here over Leo because this would finish him off. He'd be an amazing event piece. He'd probably make voyages for me. He'd probably even take over some daily shuttles with that dip base. In this case it really does depend on your roster and who you have hanging around. Because Leo, I love him. Like he's played by John Rhys Davies, who has been in so many great movies.
And TV series. How could we forget Sliders?
I was going to mention The Living Daylights because I'm just on that.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah. But it's just a case of I don't know. He's a psi primary, correct? For the engineering explanation.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that kind of counts against him a little bit now. When he came out, you can't touch him.
Yeah. Over the
Well,
last
I
6
think the
months.
best thing about John Rhys Davies is he's got the hat, and he's got the beard, and come on, Big, it's a layup for you, man.
Oh,
You said it pre-show. I was going to set it
Oh.
up for you.
oh, yes, it was. And you've got my science.
Oh, that's the best Cockney accent I've heard.
Oh,
From chat, No Name Namer says, selling Leo so hard, worth pulling the 6-packs for, because he is in this week's 6-pack, isn't he? Alongside
Yes.
Homesteader.
Short answer, no.
Also no.
Okay, let's move on. Okay. Behold done. Shall we auto? How would you like
yeah,
to
hit me
proceed?
with that intro, man. We didn't work on it for nothing, you know.
What intro?
Let me guess, you don't have it queued up?
I don't have anything queued up. What intro?
Okay.
Oh, bugger. No, I don't. I forgot to put it in Discord. I forgot about
live
that one.
TV. There's nothing like it.
All
No.
right.
Oh, well,
Fuck it,
you
we'll
go
do
on.
live.
I'll put up,
So-
I'll
so
put up
this
the
is-
image.
This is the end of our normal show. Let me scroll up through the 18 pages of notes I have for Homesteader Janeway's episode recap. This is the end of the normal show. So if you'd like to, scurry on, do something else, I don't blame you.
We abruptly gained 30 viewers.
Although let's be honest. I mean, you've made it this far, so you're pot committed at this point. You might as well stick around. I can
You're
almost
obviously a
guarantee it.
masochist, so
Yeah.
all right.
Tonight, the part
so,
of Auto
yes.
is played by Nicolas Cage.
Not the bees! Not the bees!
We got zany today. I love it.
Okay, so Homesteader Janeway from the Voyager episode Resolutions. We're going to do her little episode recap here. A season 2 episode something? I don't know. I didn't write it down. So we begin the episode in a rather idyllic landscape. Birds chirping, and the camera pans around some scenery. On Netflix, the subtitles say, in parentheses, gentle theme playing. And we come across 2 large stasis tubes laying in the grass. And through the glass, we can see Captain Janeway and First Officer Chakotay laying in stasis. So they wake up, and Janeway presses on the glass, opens up her stasis tube, and starts to climb out. Now, the only thing I'm thinking at this point is when they inevitably get back to the ship, they're going to put these stasis tubes back into storage, and some poor ensign with a bottle of Windex is going to have to go and clean off the inside of the glass, because people, you don't put your grubby hands on glass and push doors open that way, please. So Janeway and Chakotay get out of their stasis tubes, and the doctor starts talking to them via Combadge. He tells them they've been in stasis for 17 days, but that unfortunately he hasn't found a cure for the virus, even though he's been trying his best. So Chakotay asks him, well, can't we stay in stasis aboard Voyager? And Doc says, something in the planet's atmosphere is shielding you from the effects of the virus. And I'm getting Baku planet flashbacks where you have to stay within the metagetic rings. So Doctor suggests contacting the Vidians. They may be able to help. They have great medical know-how. So Janeway and Chakotay talk over that plan, but decide the Vidians are too untrustworthy. So Janeway gets on the horn to soon-to-be Captain Tuvok, who hopefully will get a card for him, and tells him to avoid contacting the Vidians at all costs and head instead for home, leave them behind. They'll have to fend for themselves. Now, for those who don't remember the Vidians, they are the saggy, gross-faced looking fools that the phage, or phage, if you're Janeway, has been ravaging their species. It destroys their organs, and they have to harvest organs from other people. So Vidians in game include Dareth, a recent 6-pack crew, Sulan, the Gauntlet 1-star Sword of Wonder, and Dinara Pell, who is good for physician collection and nothing else. So back from the intro theme, we are now in the briefing room on Voyager, and no one, except of course Sir Captain Tuvok, can believe they're seriously going to leave behind the captain and the first officer. Now Cass at this point jumps to the doctor's defense, saying he was painstaking in his research. You can't fault him. Neelix is chattering on about crew morale, etc. And Tuvok is being extra stoic. He has to be the core now that the important people are gone on the ship. And he says the decision's already been made, but we'll provide them everything they need to try to research this virus, weapons, tricorders, a replicator, etc. Captain Janeway intends to continue researching the virus. She is an able scientist and may eventually be able to effect a cure. Enter Homesteader Janeway's science primary. So Paris calls Tuvok a heartless bastard, that he can't feel lousy like everyone else on the ship, and Tuvok essentially agrees with him and dismisses them all from the room. Back on the planet's surface, Janeway and Chakotay are picking through the mass of supplies and equipment transported down to the surface. Janeway explains to Chakotay how she's going to research her environment and the mosquitoes and bugs there to try to effect a cure. They start bantering about Starfleet issue siding for the hovel they intend to build, gray or beige. And we get the first mention of the hot tub. Janeway says, by the way, this is going to be a very Chakotay heavy recap for a Janeway cruise, so buckle up.
I would expect nothing less.
I should take a breath sooner or later. Janeway says she'd love to have a bathtub to soak in and relax. And says to Chakotay, you know, Chakotay, it occurs to me we aren't exactly in a command structure anymore. Maybe you should call me Catherine. So the hair, the Janeway bun, legendary bun, has started to come down. The next scene, we jump over to engineering, where Chief Engineer Belana Torres is chewing the head off some poor crewmen for writing a terrible report. There are errors. You should redo the report. And she's sulking, obviously, because she's going to miss her Maki buddy Chakotay. But she says she's being a total professional during this very difficult time. In comes Ensign Kim, tiptoeing up to the Dragon's lair, and says the Starfleet crew are taking the developments poorly. How are the Maquis taking it? And she says, how do you think they're taking it, dipshit? We're the same crew. So a very disgruntled Kim tells her, we shouldn't take this laying down. And he starts planting the seeds of insurrection, of mutiny. Well, almost, not quite. So we bounce back to the planet, and Janeway begins setting some insect traps for her research. I mean, she's bound and determined, Janeway, to effect a cure for this virus. So she's already changed into a dress that looks like it's something out of Anne of Green Gables. She's just missing the straw hat. And Janeway and Chakotay's in this fantastic leather vest. He's looking like a true woodsman. So Janeway starts teasing him about what he's been doing alone in the woods for the last few days. And Chakotay shyly admits that he's building something, but he won't tell her what. He's shaking his tool at her. They're flirting a little bit. You're like a little kid wheedling, he says. Hey, no, Sorry. This is, I'm trying to stave off boredom of a 45-minute episode recap. So, I'm doing my best. Now, at this point, they're mere inches apart, very light flirting. They're smiling at each other. And out of nowhere, 3-star cockblock Tuvok cuts in on the comment to say, Voyager's about to move out of range. Would you like to say anything to the crew? So Janeway gets on the comm, gives a very stirring farewell speech to the entire crew, fade to black. So in the next scene, starts out with Janeway in her hot tub, built by Chakotay. Eng primary, please. And she's sponging herself off with a loofah. Her captain's log is playing in the background. She says they've decided to nickname the planet New Earth, so it's very Adam and Eve-esque. There's steam rising, by the way, from this tub where she's sitting outdoors. So at this point, I'm picturing, after they fill up this tub, Janeway standing there in her towel, firing a phaser into the hot tub to try to heat up the water, How else are you getting steaming water? Okay, so anyway, and Chakotay's inside. He's like drawing a picture with this colored sand. It kind of looks like a kid's finger painting. But all of a sudden, there's a rustling in the woods, and Janeway cries out for her hero, the man amongst men, Chakotay. So he grabs the phaser lightning fast, and its little wrist light tucks it into a stylish belt, and he charges out the door to protect Janeway. Turns out it's a monkey sitting in the tree. Janeway tries to talk to the monkey, but he skitters off, leaving Janeway standing there dripping wet in her towel, and Chakotay pretending like he's not been staring at her for the last few seconds. Well, excuse me, he says, and he walks back inside their house. The sexual tension is off the charts at this point. And there's a romantic orchestra playing in the background. You even get the Netflix subtitles, romantic theme playing, etc. So Janeway shuffles back inside the house after Chakotay, and she starts rambling about primate research, to sort of change the subject from that bit of awkwardness. Chakotay just looks at Janeway and crosses his arms and sighs. Catherine, he says, the doctor worked for weeks on a cure and couldn't find one. You've been at it 12 hours a day, 7 days a week since we got here, and we're still no closer to a cure than the day we were infected. My people have a saying. Here comes the great Native American wisdom. Even the eagle must know when to sleep. Maybe it's time we both consider that. Janeway says, maybe one day it will come to that, but she needs to keep looking. Gentle theme playing. So back on Voyager, we get a captain's log from newly christened Captain Tuvok detailing heightened tensions and lower morale amongst the crew. So long-range scans have picked up a colony of Vidian ships. Ensign Kim urges Captain Tuvok to make contact with them, see if they can help cure Janeway and Chakotay, get them back on the ship. Tuvok shuts him down. No, we're not doing it. Kim presses him again. Tuvok shuts him down. Kim walks over right behind Tuvok, pleading with him. Come on, turn the ship around. We got to do this. Tuvok shuts him down. So Kim gets a little more worked up. What's wrong with the rest of you? You know I'm right. He's yelling at Paris and anyone else who will listen. Tuvok jumps out of his chair and wheels around, and he relieves him from duty. And he says, if you don't get off the bridge now, I'm throwing you in the brig. So Kim backs down. He walks over to the turbo lift. But, this is one of the very few times in this series where Kim shows any backbone. I remember the one where he falls in love with Tal on the generational ship, and he gets some, alien STD. Janeway tells him to break off the relationship, and he says, no, you're wrong. I love her. We're staying together for all time. So suffice it to say, tensions are rising on Voyager. So later in the mess hall, Harry is sitting there eating his porridge very lonely, and he's joined by two fellow disgruntled crewmen, including Ensign Hogan, who I think was a season 1 extra for a few episodes, and some other extra who only had lines in this one episode. But they tell him that they agree we have to contact the Vidians. Kim says, well, 2 crewmen or 2 ensigns and a crewman is not going to change Tuvok's mind. So they walk over to Buna to recruit her and continue to sow the seeds of discontent. When Neelix butts in, it sounds like a way to raise morale, and they multiply the mutineers. So Kim heads over to Tuvok's quarters at 1 a.m, mind you, to try one last stab at diplomacy on his own. Tuvok is sitting there drinking wine in his blue Vulcan leisure suit and reading what I can only assume is literature titled Ponfar Positions. So Kim and Tuvok debate back and forth. Their voices get raised. You're an idiot. My idea is better. And finally, Tuvok drops the hammer. Quote, if you ever question my orders again, you will be relieved of duty permanently. The next words I expect to hear from you are yes, sir. So Kim, he's dripping with personality and attitude, and yes, sir. And he turns around and walks out, and Netflix gives us suspenseful theme Swells. So, they didn't come to blows, but they almost did. So back on planet Good Time, Chakotay is planing wood in his 16th century peasant garb. They picked some really great costumes for this episode. And I assume he's planing wood, maybe some kind of polycomposite material. Anyway, Janeway comes out of the house, spots him planing this wood, and asks, what are you up to now? He explains he's making a headboard so that she can sit up in bed and read in the lap of luxurious comfort. So she thanks him for that and for all the little things he's done to make their lives on the planet easier and more comfortable. But Chakotay has to address the elephant in the room. What I do makes you uncomfortable, doesn't it? Speaking of uncomfortable, he walks over to her, rests his arm on the tree above his head, raises his leg, and gets in real close. This is an intimate moment, so they're face to face. Janeway tells him, it feels like you've given up on finding a cure and getting home, and you focus on making this planet the home instead. Chakotay counters with, I can't sacrifice the present, waiting for a future that may never happen. And Janeway says, someday I may have to let go, but not today, okay? So she bounces off to study her insects. She's got a new red sundress and braided hair and lunchbox / research kit, and she's looking very schoolgirlish. I like this scene in particular. So Janeway wanders off into the forest to check the traps, and she hears something rustling behind her. Hello, Chakotay? It's like a really bad B-grade horror movie where you just know, the camera's behind her, you just know she's about to get attacked or murdered or something. Instead, it's the monkey. And he's come to play harbinger for an impending plasma storm. The sky is suddenly darkened and there's green lightning dancing across the sky, and Janeway smartly turns around and heads back for home. Now, I say home not house, because five-star craftsman Chakotay has done such a remarkable job sprucing up the Starfleet issue construction materials. Now, on her way back, Janeway falls to the ground several times. She's disoriented by the storm, and out of nowhere, five-star Angel of Mercy Chakotay comes down from the sky, scoops up the insect research case, and guides her back toward relative safety. Now, we cut away from the suspense of the storm to check in on the Voyager insurrection situation. Kes stops by Tuvok's ready room. Used to be Janeway's ready room. I guess he's already moved in. And she butters Tuvok up with some story about her childhood, comparing Tuvok to her father and reminding him that he need be a tad more sensitive about the crew's emotional health, because as a Vulcan, he may not be getting it. So she tells him there's a group of people on the bridge waiting to hear from you. So Tuvok follows Kes out onto the bridge to address the pitchfork-wielding mob of angry villagers, and he starts with a very sympathetic, "None of you can appreciate what it means to be in command of a ship." And he starts lecturing them on duty and order and responsibilities, and everyone's face starts drooping. He's not going to listen to us. Neelix is like staring a hole straight through him, by the way. Great acting by him. But then, the face turn of the 24th century, Tuvok says, "I can't ignore everyone's opinions. Voyager will contact the Vidians," and party poppers go off. Paris and Neelix are high-fiving. Kim whips out his clarinet, starts playing a little solo that he written for just such an occasion. But the good times can't last forever, so we switch back to Homesteader Janeway and the Goblet of Plasma Storms. And Janeway is hiding under a table, wrapped in Chakotay's loving embrace. The two of them are trying to avoid. The storm is knocking things off the wall. Research equipment and silverware are clattering to the floor. Janeway is literally sobbing and face-palming at this point, watching her precious research be destroyed. So they pan outside after the storm has passed. You see downed trees laying on the house, all the branches that Homesteader Janeway is carrying in her art strewn about. Her worst fears realized, Janeway admits that none of the research is salvageable and says, well, that's one way of letting go. So we see in the next scene, Voyagers warping toward the Vidians to try and find a cure for this virus. Now, if you recall, I forget which episode it was, the Doctor treated the Vidian woman Dinara Pell a few episodes back. So that is their in. That's their conduit for peaceful relations with the organ-stealing Vidians. Now, on the view screen, Dinara Pell promises them a supply of an antiviral agent when they arrive there. After cutting the call, the ever-prudent Captain Tuvok pulls a Jellicoe and orders battle readiness drills in the meantime. You can't be too careful. On the planet of the apes, around 30 minutes and 30 seconds in, if you want to find the art on screen, we get Homesteader Janeway carrying all these branches. And the art is very accurate. So she's clearing the brush and the branches. Chakotay is already planning additions to their house. You know, you got to have space for when the little ones arrive. So Janeway tells them a story about backpacking trips she took as a child and how much she hated them. But she admits life here is much better than that. And a very shocked and pleased as punch, Chakotay points out that that's the first positive thing she said about their living on the planet. The monkey appears yet again, very pivotal character in the plot. And the two of them talk about the potential for domesticating this little guy, perhaps as a pet for future children. Nudge, nudge. When Janeway remarks, well, we have plenty of time, which, by the way, is Homesteader Janeway's arena ability quote, proving that Wicked Realms did at least watch the scene when creating this crew. I kid. You know, it comes from a place of love. So she says, we have plenty of time, the rest of our lives. And Chakotay's trying to suppress a grin. He says, that's a long time. Like he's not completely relishing the idea of being stuck with this Captain Beautiful woman on the planet. Okay, so flash forward to that evening. This is the good stuff, by the way. If you stayed with me, you're going to get rewarded real soon. Janeway is very sore from a hard day's work of carrying these branches, and she's rubbing her shoulder. My knots are getting knots, she says. So Chakotay offers to help. Idle, this is your cue. If you'd please dim the lights and set the mood. So Chakotay gently brushes Catherine's hair to one side and begins a deep tissue massage. Janeway is writhing in pleasure, eyes falling back in her head. Oh, that feels good. He says, I've had a lot of practice at this. My mother used to get sore necks all the time. I was the only one she'd trust not to make it worse. when suddenly, 5-star chiropractor Chakotay's hands stop moving, disrupting Janeway's reverie. She realizes all the feelings she's feeling, but she's still the captain. Damn it, she can't give in to her baser instincts. At least, not yet. She stands and turns to face Chakotay, thanking him sheepishly for the massage, and retires to the bedroom. Janeway's lying in bed, staring back toward Chakotay wistfully, wrestling with her inner self. And Chakotay staring back at the darkened bedroom, drawing a deep sigh. Now, for this next scene, I'd like to introduce my illustrious co-host, Stars and Garters, in the role of Captain Catherine Janeway. We have Captain Idle on orchestra and Mr. Big McLarge with the stage directions. I, of course, will play Chakotay. So, we can begin this scene, Mr. Big.
Janeway comes out of her bedroom.
We have to talk about this.
All right.
I think we need to find some parameters about us.
I'm not sure I can define parameters, but I can tell you a story, an ancient legend among my people. It's about an angry warrior who lived his life in conflict with the rest of his tribe, a man who couldn't find peace even with the help of his spirit guide. For years, he struggled with his discontent, but the only satisfaction he ever got came when he was in battle. This made him a hero among his tribe, but the warrior still longed for peace within himself. One day, he and his war party were captured by a neighboring tribe led by a woman warrior. She called on him to join her because her tribe was too small and weak to defend itself from all its enemies. The woman warrior was brave and beautiful and very wise. The angry warrior swore to himself that he would stay by her side, doing whatever he could to make her burden lighter. From that point on, her needs would come first. And in that way, the warrior began to know the true meaning of peace.
Is that really an ancient legend?
No, but that made it easier to say.
They touch hands, fingers interlocking tenderly, and the music swells.
Now, in my head, this is where the episode ends, right? It doesn't get any better. This is peak Voyager. But the show must go on. So, we throw it back to Voyager, apparently with swanky jazz music, in the middle of a firefight. They're being swarmed by Vidian ships. They're outmanned, they're outgunned, they're outmatched. When suddenly the doctor gets a comm call routed through sickbay. It is Dinara Pell, who apologizes for the trap. She says she didn't know that the Vidians were going to trap them, and she still has the antivirus if she can only get it to them. But they can't transport it with the shields up. Great plot device, by the way. So Captain Tuvok devises a brilliant multi-part plan. Voyager's going to drop the shields. Doc will transport the medicine aboard. Taurus will eject an antimatter container toward the Vidians. Ensign Kim detonate it with a torpedo, and Paris take the ship to full impulse to escape the shockwave, and they execute it perfectly, disabling the Vidians. And then, with the antivirus serum in tow, they set a course back toward the planet to pick up Janeway and Chakotay. So for our last sweet moments in paradise, Janeway is tending to some vegetable seedlings outside their home, wearing a lovely blue ensemble, I might add. Chakotay joins her, and they chat about gardening and the slower pace of life here on the planet. He asks Janeway to join him in the house to get her opinion on something. Now, as we enter the house for this next scene, I'd like to welcome back to the stage Mr. Stars and Garters as Captain Catherine Janeway, and Mr. Big McLarge as not only the stage directions, but also Captain Tuvok, and me as 5-star love stud Chakotay.
Chakotay shows her a schematic on the desk computer.
What do you think?
A boat!
You said you wanted to explore the river. I think I could build this boat.
We can go on a camping trip.
I'm not sure we could fit the bathtub in the boat.
Well, that's all right. I'll have the river.
Static is heard. Captain Janeway, do you hear me? Do you read me? Repeat.
Do you hear that?
Yes.
Chakotay goes to a shelf and gets the Combadges. To Captain Janeway, do you read me? This is Tuvok calling Captain Janeway and Commander Chakotay. Please respond.
This is Janeway.
And Captain, it's good to hear your voice. we have news.
What is it?
We have medicine which we believe will effectively treat your condition. We plan to be in orbit within 30 hours.
And we get Chakotay's inner monologue at this point. And then we get Chakotay's inner monologue at this point. And Chakotay has no inner monologue. So, with Tuvok charging to the rescue to save the day, our next scene sees us outside the house. Captain, now properly Captain Janeway, is in her uniform, staring longingly at this bed of Talaxian tomato plants. And a uniformed Commander Chakotay joins her, carrying the last of the supplies out of the vacant, lifeless husk of a house. The two stand face to face one last time, and their spines straighten and their upper lips stiffen, and they beam back aboard the prison ship Voyager, where love goes to die. So the duo stroll onto the bridge and start rambling about reports this and ship's business that. They don't even look at each other once during this tragic, tragic scene. And the credits roll, thus burying the greatest love story of all time. And that is Resolutions from Star Trek Voyager.
Yay.
5 out of 5 would go on fanfiction.net again.
Amazing. Oh.
There's like 3 people watching this right now, isn't there?
No, there is more than that.
It's been a consistent 20. I've been watching it.
We've been good. That was absolutely amazing. Did I miss a cue?
You may have missed a couple cues, yes.
Oh, okay.
It's okay. Hey, you were so into the piano, man.
I just get... Anyway, I think on that note, considering the show has now gone on for an hour and 51 minutes, it is time for us to say goodbye for this week. Next week will be the final part of the Mega, and hopefully we'll have a bit more information for a flashback and something else entertaining. We'll see. We'll see a little bit more fallout from the offer wall.
I think you mean something entertaining.
Hey. And guys, thank you from me. Anything more to say from you guys?
That's tardigrade.
It's the tardigrade. Where's Picard?
I told my fleet. Yeah, I told my fleet I would do this. This was a very thoughtful present given for the birth of my daughter.
How many Klingons has it killed?
We stopped counting.
And on that note, it's goodbye from me. It's goodbye from the guys, and we'll see you next week. Ta-ra.